A nuclear bomb detonates. Every building for miles is gone. Every person gone. And somewhere in the rubble, a cockroach calmly crawls out, completely unharmed. That's the image. That's the myth. And it's mostly wrong. For decades, cockroaches would survive a nuclear apocalypse has been treated as an established fact, repeated in movies, textbooks, casual conversation, even science classrooms. It sounds too specific to be made up. Surely someone tested this. Someone did. But the real result is a lot stranger and a lot less dramatic than the myth suggests. Let's start with what a nuclear blast actually does, because this is where the myth falls apart first. A nuclear detonation isn't just radiation, it's an enormous shockwave and heat intense enough to vaporize concrete and steel within a certain radius. Cockroaches have no special defense against heat or blast force. If a roach is anywhere near the detonation point, it dies exactly like everything else nearby, instantly. No exceptions. So the surviving a direct nuke version of the myth is false right out of the gate. But here's where it gets more interesting. Slightly farther from the blast, outside the zone of total destruction, radiation becomes the main threat instead of heat and force. And this is the part of the myth that's actually grounded in something real. Cockroaches genuinely do tolerate radiation better than humans. Not infinitely better, not magically better, but measurably better. To understand why, you need a basic rule from radiation biology. Radiation does the most damage to cells that are actively dividing. This has been understood since the early 1900s, when researchers studying radiation exposure first noticed that rapidly dividing tissue, like bone marrow or the lining of your intestines, breaks down fastest under radiation exposure, while slower dividing tissue holds up much longer. Human cells divide constantly, all day, every day. That's part of why radiation sickness hits humans so hard and so fast. Cockroach cells divide far less often. They only need to divide during a limited window right after molting, when their exoskeleton is still soft and their body is actively growing into the next stage. Outside of that short window, cell division slows dramatically. Fewer dividing cells means fewer targets for radiation to damage. That's the entire mechanism behind the myth. It's not armor, it's not magic. It's just biological timing. In the 1950s and 60s, researchers actually tested this directly, exposing various insect species to different radiation doses and measuring survival rates. Cockroaches consistently outperformed most other tested organisms, tolerating radiation levels many times higher than what would be fatal to a human. So the myth has real teeth, just not as many as pop culture gave it credit for. Here's the twist that usually gets left out entirely. Cockroaches aren't even the most radiation-resistant creature on Earth. Not close. That title arguably belongs to a creature you've probably never worried about surviving anything, the tardigrade. Also called a water bear, this microscopic organism has been studied extensively for its almost absurd durability. Research published by biologists studying extremophiles has shown tardigrades can survive radiation doses hundreds of times higher than what cockroaches can tolerate, along with surviving the vacuum of space, extreme dehydration, and temperatures near absolute zero. Certain bacteria are even tougher. One species, Dinococcus radiodurans, has become a favorite subject in radiation research specifically because of its extraordinary ability to repair its own DNA after radiation damage that would permanently destroy the genetic material of nearly anything else. So if you're ranking survival ability after a nuclear event, cockroaches don't even make it to the podium. They're respectable. They're impressive relative to us, but they're nowhere near the top of the list. Why did the myth specifically attach itself to cockroaches then, instead of tardigrades or radiation-resistant bacteria? Timing and visibility. This myth took shape during the Cold War, when nuclear anxiety was at its peak, and cockroaches were already a widely recognized, widely disliked household pest. A tardigrade wasn't part of pop culture. Almost nobody outside a research lab even knew they existed. Cockroaches, on the other hand, were already the go-to symbol of something disgusting and impossible to get rid of. The myth didn't need to be scientifically precise. It just needed a familiar villain, and cockroaches were sitting right there. So here's where that leaves us. Cockroaches would not survive a direct nuclear blast. Nothing does. But farther from ground zero, where radiation, not heat, becomes the deciding factor, cockroaches genuinely do have a real biological edge over us, rooted in something as unglamorous as how often their cells happen to divide. And somewhere in a lab, completely unbothered by any of this drama, a tardigrade is quietly outlasting all of us anyway. If this changed how you think about the nuclear cockroach myth, hit like on this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes it. For more science myths debunked properly, one video at a time.